Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The gun in General Kalen Varick's hand didn't shake, but his entire world was vibrating, shattering into a million jagged shards of impossibility. He pressed the cold muzzle against the physician's temple, the steel digging into the sweating man's skin, his own golden eyes burning with the ferocity of a cornered predator. "Say that again," Kalen hissed, his voice a low rumble that usually commanded legions of soldiers. "Lie to me one more time, and I will paint these pristine white walls with your brains." The doctor, a beta named Eris, trembled so violently his glasses slipped down his nose. I checked the blood work 3 times, General. The hormone levels, the energy signature in your lower abdomen. It's undeniable. It's impossible, it shouldn't exist. But the data doesn't lie. Kalen withdrew the pistol, slamming it onto the metal instrument tray with a deafening clang. He turned away, ripping the collar of his military tunic open as if it were strangling him. He was an alpha, prime alpha, the youngest general in the history of the Aurelian Empire. He had crushed rebellions, slaughtered beasts, and commanded the respect of the Senate through sheer biological dominance. Alphas nodded. They bit. They conquered. They did not carry. Pregnant. Kalen spat the word like poison. Tasted vile. An alpha cannot conceive. It violates every law of nature. Unless, Eris whispered, his voice barely audible, the partner was something else, something older. A genetic anomaly recorded only in the forbidden archives. Kalen froze. The memory of that night, 3 months ago, crashed into him like a tidal wave. The victory gala, the heavy, suffocating scent of rain and crushed obsidian, the way the air had warped around him. Grand Duke Silas Thorne. Kalen gripped the edge of the sink, the ceramic cracking under his fingers. Silas was his political rival, the shadow to Kalen's light. Where Kalen was the Empire's sword, Silas was its poison. A man who operated in the dark, controlling the intelligence networks. They hated each other. They had spent years verbally eviscerating one another in the Senate floor. But that night, Kalen hadn't been drunk on wine. He had been drunk on power. Or so he thought. He had challenged Silas to a private drink, intending to extract information. He remembered the heat. A heat that shouldn't have been possible for an alpha to feel outside of a rut. He remembered being pinned, not by physical strength, but by a crushing, paralyzed weight in the air. He remembered begging. "Get out," Kalen ordered the doctor. "General, you need supplements, you need—" "I said get out," Kalen roared, his pheromones exploding outward in a wave of burnt cedar and gunpowder. An aggressive, terrifying scent meant to force submission. But the door didn't open for the doctor to leave. It opened to reveal the very nightmare haunting Kalen's mind. Grand Duke Silas Thorne stood in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. He was dressed in a suit of charcoal silk, his silver hair swept back, exposing the sharp, predatory lines of his face. His eyes were the color of the deep ocean, dark and unfathomable, and he was smiling. "Leave us," Silas said softly to the doctor. The doctor didn't even look at Kalen for permission. He scrambled past the Duke like a frightened rat. Kalen snatched his gun off the tray, leveling it at Silas's chest. "You knew." Silas walked into the room, unbothered by the weapon pointed at his heart. He closed the door behind him, the click echoing like a gavel sentencing Kalen to death. "Put the toy away, Kalen. It's bad for the child." "There is no child," Kalen shouted, though his hand wavered for the first time in his life. "What did you do to me? What kind of monster are you?" Silas stopped inches from the gun barrel. He reached up, placing a gloved hand over the muzzle, and slowly pushed it down. Kalen tried to resist, but his body betrayed him. A strange, sickening sweetness curled in his gut, a biological instinct screaming at him to submit to the sire. "I am what the history books call an enigma," Silas murmured, stepping into Kalen's personal space. The scent of rain and obsidian flooded Kalen's senses, instantly calming his racing heart against his will. We are the apex. We do not bow to alphas. We break them, and we breed them. Kalen stumbled back, his legs hitting the examination table. I will abort it. I will cut it out myself if I have to. Silas's expression shifted. The amusement vanished, replaced by a cold, terrifying possessiveness. He moved faster than Kalen could track, slamming his hands on either side of Kalen on the table, trapping him. Touch a hair on the head of my heir? Silas whispered, his voice dropping into a register that made Kalen's bones vibrate. And I will burn this empire to ash just to build a cage for you. You are carrying the first of a new lineage, General. You belong to me now. The weeks that followed were a blur of nausea and political maneuvering. Kalen tried to maintain his routine, but the biology of his condition was relentless. He was tired, a bone-deep exhaustion that coffee and stimulants couldn't fix. His uniform, usually perfectly tailored, began to feel restrictive around his midsection. He had expected Silas to lock him away. That's what Kalen would have done. But Silas was playing a longer, more cruel game. He allowed Kalen to continue his duties, but he was always there. If Kalen was in a Senate hearing, Silas was watching from the gallery, his dark eyes tracking Kalen's every micro-expression. If Kalen was inspecting the troops, Silas's black carriage would be parked on the perimeter. It came to a head during the annual war council. The room was filled with the smoke of cigars and the heavy egos of 20 Alpha commanders. Kalen stood over the holographic map, outlining the strategy for the northern border. The supply lines are vulnerable here, Kalen said, pointing to a mountain pass. If we move the heavy artillery by dawn, we can... A wave of dizziness hit him so hard the map blurred into a swirl of blue light. The smell of the general next to him, a coarse alpha named Vargas who smelled of sour musk and cheap tobacco, suddenly triggered a violent heave in Kalen's stomach. Kalen gripped the table, his knuckles turning white. Asterisk, not here. Please, God. Not here. Asterisk, General Varick? Vargas sneered, looking a bit pale. Perhaps the strategy is too complex for you today. The other alphas chuckled. Weakness was blood in the water. Kalen grit his teeth, swallowing the bile. I am fine. As I was saying, the scent of sour musk hit him again. Kalen gagged, audible and wet. The room went silent. For an alpha to show physical weakness, especially nausea, was a sign of a defect. Is he sick? Someone whispered. Maybe he's finally cracking under the pressure, another muttered. Vargas stepped closer, his pheromones flaring aggressively to challenge Kalen. You smell different, Varick. Sweet, like rotting fruit. Are you hiding an injury? Or have you turned into an Omega? The insult was grave. Kalen's hand went to his sidearm, but his vision swam. He was going to pass out. He was going to collapse in front of the entire high command, and his secret would be out. His career would be over. Suddenly, the doors to the council room burst open. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The heavy, oppressive dominance of the alphas was crushed under a weight far greater. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, replaced by the crushing pressure of the deep ocean. Grand Duke Silas Thorne strode in. He didn't look at the other generals. His eyes were locked on Kalen. Grand Duke, Vargas stammered, stepping back, his instinctual fear kicking in. This is a closed military council. And you are boring me, Silas said, his voice casual but carrying a lethal undercurrent. He walked straight to Kalen, who was swaying on his feet. Silas didn't ask for permission. He slid an arm around Kalen's waist, pulling the general's back against his broad chest. To the room, it might have looked like a supportive gesture. To Kalen, it was a claim. Silas's scent, clean, sharp, and overpowering, washed over him, chasing away the nausea, grounding him. The general is unwell due to a classified assignment I have given him. Silas lied smoothly, his gaze sweeping over the room, daring anyone to contradict him. He requires immediate rest. The council is adjourned. You can't just, Vargas started. Silas turned his head, his eyes glowing with a faint violet luminescence, the mark of the enigma. I said, adjourned. Vargas fell into his chair, choking on his words. The other alphas averted their gazes, their biological instincts screaming at them to submit to the apex predator. Silas guided Kalen out of the room, supporting his weight. As soon as the heavy oak doors clicked shut, Kalen tried to shove him away, but his arms felt like lead. I didn't need your help, Kalen rasped, though he was clinging to Silas's lapel to stay upright. You were about to faint into Vargas's lap, Silas said, his voice devoid of mockery, replaced by a simmering anger. I told you to limit your hours. You are stubborn, Kalen. It will be the death of you. I am a general, Kalen snapped, looking up at Silas. I am not some delicate flower you can keep in a greenhouse. I have a duty. Silas stopped walking. They were in the deserted hallway of the ministry. He turned Kalen to face him, his hands gripping Kalen's shoulders. Your duty is to survive, Silas said intensely. Do you think they will let you keep your rank if they find out? An alpha who spreads his legs and conceives? They will tear you apart. They will strip you of your medals, lock you in a breeding facility, and study you like a lab rat. Kalen flinched. He knew it was true. So what is the alternative? I become your pet? I live in your shadow. You become my husband. The words hung in the silence. Kalen stared at him, stunned. Marriage? To you? We are enemies, Silas. We stand for opposite things. We were enemies, Silas corrected, his hand moving down to rest tentatively, almost reverently, over Kalen's stomach. The heat from his palm seeped through the layers of Kalen's uniform. Now we are family. Marry me. My title outranks everyone in the military. As my consort, you are untouchable. No one would dare question your scent or your waistline. I can protect you. And the price? Kalen whispered, feeling the trap close around him. There is always a price with you. Silas leaned down, his lips brushing against Kalen's ear. The price is you, Kalen. Your loyalty. Your body. Your fire. I don't just want the child. I want the father. I've wanted you since the moment you first pointed a sword at me 5 years ago. Kalen shivered. It wasn't fear. It was something darker, hotter. He looked at the man who had ruined his life, the man who was offering him the only lifeline he had. Fine, Kalen breathed, surrendering his pride to save his life. But know this, Silas. I am not a docile creature. If you try to cage me, I will bite. Silas smirked, the expression dark and hungry. I'm counting on it. The marriage was a spectacle, a political earthquake that shook the capital. The Iron General and the Shadow Duke. It was the alliance of the century. They moved into Silas's estate, a sprawling Gothic manor on the cliffs overlooking the sea. Domesticity was a battlefield Kalen was unprepared for. He expected Silas to be domineering, to treat him like a broodmare. Instead, Silas was attentive. When Kalen's hips began to ache from the shifting bone structure, he woke up to find Silas massaging them with warm oils, his touch firm but soothing. When Kalen craved strange combinations of food at 3 a.m., Silas would silently rise and return with a tray of spicy pickled plums and seared steak. It was confusing. Kalen wanted to hate him. He wanted to maintain the wall of animosity. But it was hard to hate a man who worshipped the ground you walked on, even if that worship felt like a golden chain. The turning point came in the 7th month. Kalen was in the manor's library, reviewing reports from the front lines. He had been officially put on medical leave, but he refused to be cut off completely. He didn't hear the window shatter. One moment he was reading. The next, a black-clad figure swung in, a serrated dagger gleaming in the moonlight. An assassin, likely sent by the separatist faction that Kalen had decimated years ago. Kalen's instincts screamed. He rolled out of the chair, grabbing a heavy brass letter opener. He was heavy, slow, his center of gravity shifted. The assassin lunged. Kalen parried, but the movement pulled a muscle in his abdomen. A sharp, blinding pain. He stumbled. The assassin kicked him in the chest, sending him crashing into the bookshelf. Books rained down. The assassin raised the dagger. Die, traitor! The door to the library exploded inward. It wasn't a kick that opened it. The wood simply shattered under a force of pure kinetic energy. Silas stood there, but he didn't look human. His eyes were fully violet, glowing with eldritch light. Shadows coiled around him like living serpents. The assassin froze, the primal fear of a prey animal facing a god seizing him. "You touched him," Silas said. The voice wasn't just sound. It was a vibration that cracked the glass in the remaining windows. Silas didn't run. He blurred. He was across the room in a heartbeat, his hand clamping around the assassin's throat. He lifted the man off the ground as if he weighed nothing. Kalen watched, gasping for breath, clutching his stomach. He had seen violence. He had seen war. But he had never seen the brutality of an enigma protecting his mate. Silas didn't just kill the assassin. He dismantled him. The sound of snapping bone echoed in the room. Silas tossed the broken body aside like trash and fell to his knees beside Kalen. The monstrous aura vanished instantly, replaced by frantic terror. Silas's hands hovered over Kalen, trembling. "Kalen! Kalen! Look at me!" Silas ripped his own silk shirt off to press it against a small cut on Kalen's forehead. "Is the baby hurt? Are you hurt?" Kalen looked at Silas. The Duke was covered in the assassin's blood, his eyes wide with panic. For the first time, Kalen saw beneath the mask of the arrogant overlord. He saw a man terrified of loss. I'm okay," Kalen whispered. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the instinct to seek comfort. He reached out, grabbing Silas's bloody hand. "Silas!" Silas let out a shuddering breath and pulled Kalen into his arms, burying his face in Kalen's neck. He was shaking. "I should have doubled the guards. I should have been here. If I lost you." "You didn't," Kalen said, his hand moving up to stroke Silas's hair. The action was automatic, but it felt right. "You came for me. Always," Silas murmured against his skin. "I will tear the world apart before I let anything harm you." Kalen closed his eyes, leaning into the embrace. The hatred was gone, burned away by the realization. This wasn't just a political trap. This wasn't just biology. Silas loved him. It was a twisted, dangerous, obsessive love, but it was real. And God help him, Kalen realized as he inhaled the scent of rain and obsidian. He felt safe. For an alpha who had spent his life fighting to be the strongest, the ability to finally rest, to let someone else be the shield, was the most seductive thing in the world. The labor was brutal. It was a storm of pain that lasted for 16 hours. Because Kalen's male anatomy wasn't designed for birth, a C-section was necessary, performed by the finest surgeons in the empire within the sterile sanctuary of the manor. When Kalen woke, the room was dim and quiet. He felt light, hollowed out, sore. He turned his head. Silas was sitting in a chair beside the bed. He was holding a small bundle wrapped in velvet. The Grand Duke, the terror of the Senate, the enigma who could crush armies, looked utterly captivated. He was tracing the curve of the infant's cheek with the tip of his finger. Silas sensed Kalen waking and looked up. His smile was soft, exhausted, and radiant. "It's a boy," Silas whispered. "He has your eyes." Kalen tried to sit up, wincing. Silas was there instantly, adjusting the pillows, handing him water, then gently placing the bundle in his arms. Kalen looked down. The baby was tiny, sleeping soundly. He had a tuft of silver hair and, even in sleep, a scowl that looked remarkably like Kalen's. A strange emotion swelled in Kalen's chest. Not shame, not anger, pride. He had made this. He had survived. "What do we call him?" Kalen asked, his voice raspy. "I was thinking. Orion," Silas said. "The hunter." Orion. Kalen tested the name. "It suits him." Silas sat on the edge of the bed, his arm going around Kalen's shoulders. "The Senate is demanding your return," Silas said quietly. Rumors are spreading about your absence. Vargas is making a play for your position. Kalen looked up from the baby. The old fire sparked in his golden eyes. But it was different now. It was colder, more calculated. He wasn't just fighting for his pride anymore. He was fighting for his legacy. Let them talk, Kalen said. When I return, I will remind them why I am the general. He looked at Silas. And I assume I will have the Grand Duke's support? Silas kissed Kalen's temple. You have the Grand Duke's soul, Kalen. And his army. Let them come. We will rule this empire together. You, me, and our son. Kalen leaned back against his husband, looking at the child that bridged the gap between their worlds. He was an alpha who had been broken, changed, and remade. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a father. He was a mate. And he was more dangerous than he had ever been. Yes, Kalen whispered, watching the sunrise through the window. Together. And that is how the Iron General learned that surrender is not always a defeat, but merely a change in strategy. If you enjoyed seeing the mighty fall into love's trap, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, is love valid if it starts with manipulation? Or is the Grand Duke unforgivable? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,